What's going on, everyone? So, Scream 7 is supposed to be very Sidney-centric, supposed to kind of get back to Sidney being the main focus, the main lead, which is fine. I've always talked about how I personally would like to see them move off of Sidney, but I understand, given the circumstances, given the quick departure of the core four casting characters, the safest route to go is Sidney Prescott, right? So, okay, fine, get it, you got me on board, let's go, let's do it, right? And now you're also adding this family dynamic, something that, one, we've never had, period, in the Scream franchise. Scream 5 was where we first established that Sidney was married to Mark Kincaid, and they had kids together and all that stuff. And something that I've talked about, the beauty of it kind of being open is they can kind of make her kids, outside of the one in the stroller, obviously, but can make all her kids whatever age they need to be for this movie to make sense. Right? So it's like, okay, cool. We're getting Mark Kincaid back. We got Sidney Prescott. It's going to be a family dynamic film. The kids and Mark are going to be targeted. Like, what a great kind of new step in a new direction for this Scream, right? Like, you have Sidney, right? Sidney is not only responsible for herself right now, and not only has to try to keep herself alive, but now she has to worry about, however many children she has, as well as, we know she has at least three. Now, again, she could have more. She could have 5. She could have 7. I mean, literally, you're talking a 25-year span between Scream 3 and by the time this movie comes out. So, she could have 12 kids, right? But in all seriousness, I think it'll be reasonable. She'll probably have 3 to maybe 4 kids, something in that ballpark, right? Because we know she at least has 3, because she has the one in the stroller. And then she says that I'm getting a run in before I got to take the girls, as in plural, as in 2, to school. So we know that she has at least 3 kids. Okay. But those kids, again, you can kind of make it work however you want. So it's just, the idea sounds great. It's like, okay, now we're going to get this cool, interesting Scream film. It's going to be very family centric and poses a lot of just possibilities and excitement. But now we're getting rumors from Beyond the Mask, which, take it all with a grain of salt. I know Beyond the Mask, they've been in the business for a long time, but again, nothing is for certain until it is. And we've seen credible people throw stuff out before, and, they've made changes or whatever, right? So again, take it all with a grain of salt. But supposedly, according to him, Mark Kincaid is very limited in this film, and so are the children. Then why are we doing a family film here? Why would you ever even establish the family if you're not going to utilize them? What is the point? Right? If you're just basically going to have, the opening scene, and it's Sidney, Mark, and the kids, and they're hanging out, living their best life, and boom, Ghostface pops up, and then it's I have a safe house that we're all going to go to, and Sidney drops off Mark and the kids at the safe house, and then she just goes, to go fight Ghostface. What was the point? Right? You established a family. Something that is a new element to Sidney Prescott that we've never even thought of, right? Given her past and her history and stuff. And with all the stabs and everything, it's just there's always been this thought of can she even have kids? I've seen plenty of people, where when we've had just open discussions and live streams and stuff about kids, people being man, could she even have kids because of just the trauma her body has taken over the years? So the fact that she does is just such an amazing element that you're introducing that now you're just kind of stripping away, if that's the point. Right? Sidney's the BASS, right? She's the bad, right? Sorry, just I'm trying to keep it with YouTube without getting flagged, right? She's the boss. There we go. It's a better way to put it, right? We all want to see her take on Ghostface, Gale, all that, right? But I want to see Mark Kincaid too. If you're going to introduce him into this film, to just have him basically be there and be a stay-at-home dad, and then he just is hiding with the kids in a cabin, doesn't really do much, right? Why even have him in this film at all? Why not really properly utilize him and have him be a real character, and him and Sidney are tracking down Ghostface together for their children? Again, you can have the children be whatever age you need. Literally, Sidney could have kids in their 20s. Right? Again, you're talking 25 years. Let's say it took 2 years from Scream 3 for her to have kids. You're talking 23. That child could be 22, 23 years old. And there's talks about there being a time jump. Right? So if there's a time jump, then you're talking the kid could be, if it's a year, kid could be 24. Right? Like, there's a million ways that you could approach this and go about this. Right? Like, so, again, I'm all for them keeping it Sidney focused. And okay, if you don't want to have Mark and the kids and they're too heavy, but if they're only in the film basically in the beginning and at the end, like, that's kind of like, what's the point? Right? Like, you know, I want to see their relation. I want to see, like, how are Mark and Sidney? Are they just the perfect couple? Are they, you know, is Sidney just, has she just been so hurt and traumatized over the years that she, you know, is maybe a little bit of a handful, but Mark loves her regardless because he understands the woman she is, and he understands the trauma behind it because he had the experience, right? Like, what is the dynamic between them? What's the story between them? How did they fall in love? Was it immediate? You know, did it take years? Did Mark keep chasing Sidney and Sidney kept saying no, and then finally just kind of, they just had that spark? Like, there's so many things that I want them to explore that it just doesn't sound like they're going to explore. It doesn't sound like they're really going to address it. They're really just going to kind of brush over it and go, oh yeah, here's the kids, here's all that. It's like, and so you're not going to develop the kids, you're not going to develop Mark, because they're all going to be hiding somewhere in the safe house that Sidney has, and it's just like, why? Again, I look, Sidney and Gale team up, I'm all for that. Give me that. But you know what would have been better? Sidney Gale team up with Mark Kincaid, because that's her husband. And, you know, maybe even having this moment where Mark and Sidney have this thing, and Gale just kind of breaks down for a moment because it reminds her of Dewey or whatever, right? Like, there's so many things that you could do and just explore with that possibility. And you just kind of feels to me like they're just kind of, it's, you know, just, we don't want to go through that. We don't want to go through with that. Then why did you introduce it? Why introduce Sidney and her husband and her kids if you're not going to have them involved? What kind of husband is just going to keep letting his wife just go after Ghostface alone? Right? Like, I understand you want your kids to be safe and all that stuff, but you took an oath to your wife, right? And on top of that, you're telling me there's nowhere else that you could put the kids and keep them safe? No one you know, his family, you know, he was a detective, he doesn't have any connections or anything like that still. Like, literally, Mark is the only one that can watch the kids and keep them safe. All right, like, while Sidney and him go and take on Ghostface, like, it's just, again, I'm all for Sidney and Gale, and that's kind of what this film is seeming like, right? Because, again, same thing from, according to Beyond the Mask, Gale has a bigger role in this film, right? She's supposed to get more screen time and all that stuff. Okay, again, I'm okay with that, but can we actually have, you know, some story? Can we actually have some connection to Sidney and her children and her family? Like, I'm never going to complain about getting some Sidney and Gale team up, right? I wish it was better in Scream 5 than what we got, but I also want, you know, like, I don't want them to just kind of gloss over and brush over the story. You know, I don't want them to just brush over and ignore all the information that we need to make Sidney and Mark make sense. So we're all just supposed to just accept they're together and life's great and all that stuff, and there's not, like, they're just the perfect cut. Like, again, I want to see some insight. I want to see some story. I want to see some tie-in, and, you know, I want to see at least give me a little bit of Mark and Sidney. I'm not saying it has to be the entire movie. Like, you can have moments, but I just feel like it's shaping up as if, like, Sidney's gonna be attacked, family in danger. She's gonna drop off Mark and the kids, and she's gonna meet up with Gale, and Gale and Sidney are gonna go take on Ghostface. Then why introduce the family at all? Like, why? And that's where my problem is. That's where my dilemma lies. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. I pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you kind of feel the same way? Do you think, like, yeah, like, you know, you know, like if you're going to introduce the family, you need to have the family tie-in. You need to have that connection. You need to kind of explain and go in depth into that story. Don't just kind of brush it over or do nothing. I do think, no, it's fine. Like, as long as we see them and then they're safe and they're fine and it's Gail and Sidney's story, right? And all that is adding up and they're kind of going on their adventures together, then that's fine. You kind of in the middle of that, like, yeah, I want Mark and Sidney, but I also would love to have, you know, Sidney and Gail. You know how I feel, whatever your thoughts are. I'd love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. So we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.